the Jewish neighborhood on the Lower East Side of New York in the early 1900s. From our collection, this is actually the oldest footage dating back to 1903. In the early 1900s, the majority of the East Side population was Jewish. Thousands of immigrants from Eastern Europe who had made the long trek to the United States, escaping anti-Semitism and poverty, settled in the Lower East Side of New York. Note how the vendors weigh the fish on scales. They then tear a piece of newspaper, wrap the fish, and hand it to the customer. Yiddish-speaking Jews worked hard to make a living, working in factories and as peddlers and salesmen in the neighborhood's bustling market. As film was a novelty in its time, we see many youngsters trying to get into the picture. New York on Erev Pesach, 1932. On Erev Pesach, the market is full of people shopping for food and wine for Yom Tov. One can see hundreds of people lining up for a chalukah of matzos. This film was shot in 1913 during the time of the Ottoman Empire, before the British took over what was then known as Palestine. At that time, the Turks controlled Eretz Yisrael. Seen here, Pesach in Yerushalayim, 1913. Many of the Yidden of Yerushalayim, dressed in their best Yom Tov clothing, stream to the Kollel. The Hasidim, wearing their Streimlach, and the Sephardim, with their traditional clothing, fill the narrow alleyway of the Kollel. This is a view of the Kollel from above. The Yidden crowd together in the small area of the Kollel and are mispalel. The kever of Shimon HaTzadik is shown. There is a tradition among the Yerushalmi Yidden to go to the kever of Shimon HaTzadik, who is referred to as Nishyorei Anshe Knesset HaGedola. This minhag is kept up to this very day. Chevron and Meron HaMachpelah. Before 1929, 1,200 Yidden lived in Chevron. With the consent of the British, who ruled at the time, the Muslims placed many restrictions on the Yidden who wanted to daven at the Meron HaMachpelah. Included was the infamous law barring Yidden from proceeding higher than the seventh step. This was punishable under the penalty of death. Celebrating Lag BaOmer in Meron, 1935. Going to the kever of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai on Lag BaOmer is a tradition of old. Yidden living in Eretz Yisrael and surrounding areas used to make every effort to daven at the kever of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai on the day of his yahrzeit. Fires were lit, and the crowds would dance and sing. In 1936, the Imre Emes of Ger visited Eretz Yisrael. The Imre Emes served as the Rebbe of Ger in the period between both world wars. Before escaping to Eretz Yisrael and settling in Yerushalayim in 1940, the Imre Emes visited Eretz Yisrael and his Hasidim living there numerous times. In 1939, the Knesset Mordechai of Sadiger visited Eretz Yisrael. Shalom Yosef Friedman of Sadiger would send many of his Hasidim to settle in Eretz Yisrael, and many of them established Kehilos in different cities. In 1925, he visited Eretz Yisrael, and in 1939, as seen in this video, he visited the country again. At the advice of his uncle, the Hasyatner Rebbe, he settled in Tel Aviv and managed to bring his family to him in Eretz Yisrael before the outbreak of World War II. the Rebbe visited a vineyard in Eretz Yisrael. Jewish life in the Ukraine in the early 1900s. Before World War II, a little more than a third of the Ukraine's urban population consisted of Yidden, who were the largest national minority in the country. Here we see classic scenes of shtetl life, Yidden leaving the shlachtos with their slaughtered poultry. In the Ukrainian Republic, Yiddish was a state language along with Ukrainian and Russian. The Jews in Ukraine suffered from anti-Semitism, pogroms, and blood libel cases. In 1915, the Ukrainian government expelled thousands of Jews from the empire's borders areas. During the Russian Civil War of 1918 through 1920, over 30,000 Yidden were killed. But with all the dangers and poverty, Yiddish kehilos flourished in the Ukraine. Hundreds of Batei Midrashos, yeshivas, chadorim, and community organizations filled the Jewish ghettos with Torah and Chesed. In 1930, Czechoslovakia had a population of over 350,000 Yidden. As can be seen in the video, Yidden on their way to shul for Shabbos davening, wearing streimelach and talesim. Jewish life in Cracow, 1930. Before World War II, over 50,000 Yidden lived in Cracow. This represented about 25% of the city's population. Most of the Jewish population resided in the neighborhood of Kazimierz. Although Kazimierz was a poor area, it was full of life, and many of the wealthier Yidden preferred to live there in order to be close to the many shuls. In the background, we can see the Isaac Shul, built in the year 1644. As you can see, the courtyard in front of the shul was used as a marketplace. Here, a balagola starts his wagon, while a schlepper schleps his wares.
Rebbe Isaac Shul was built at the beginning of the 17th century by Rabbi Yitzchak Yekalish, head of the Jewish community. A synagogue built in the 16th century bears the name of the Ramah, Rabbi Moshe Isserles, one of the great codifiers in the history of Judaism. Here he composed the Mappah, or the tablecloth, to complement the Shulchan Aruch of Rabbi Yosef Karo from Safed, and to adapt it to the customs of Ashkenazi Jewry. The old cemetery next to the synagogue named after the Ramah. Here are buried great rabbis of the period. Rabbi Yom Tov Lipman Heller, the great Talmudist Rabbi Yaakov Polak, the Kabbalist Rabbi Natan Neta Shapira, and many others. On Lag BaOmer, the anniversary of the Ramah's death, thousands of Jews come from all over Poland to prostrate themselves upon his grave. There are many synagogues in Cracow, and they recall days of glory as well as days of massacre and heroism. The Kupa Shul, the Poper, and the tall synagogue, where the prayer hall has been built on the top floor for security reasons. The Alta Shul, a synagogue built in the 14th century in the shape of a fortress, the oldest synagogue in Poland. But when Sabbath comes, rest comes to the Jewish district of Kazimierz. Business stops, and the shops close. The Jews hurry to the prayer houses in silken kapotas, their heads crowned with streimelach. This is how they go to Sabbath prayers. Git Shabbos, Git Shabbos.
Cheder Kinder and Yeshiva Bachrim. Children help prepare for Sukkot by schlepping the schach. Jewish life in Lodz. Approximately 250,000 Yidden were living in Lodz before the Second World War. This comprised approximately a third of the city's population. The area was full of Jewish shops and businesses. One can see porters with ropes on their backs, lugging items, and horse-drawn wagons delivering merchandise. Lodz was known as a city of industry, and many of the Yidden there made a living working in the textile trade. There were many kehilas in the city, which included a large number of Hasidic groups. Each kehila had its own shul or klois and set up a cheder or yeshiva where young talmidim would learn. Jewish life in Lvov. Lvov, which was also known as Lemberg, had approximately 110,000 Yidden living there on the eve of World War II. This comprised about a third of the city's population, and this was the third largest Jewish community in Poland. People are heading home after a day's work, wrapped in hats and coats due to the cold weather. The man wearing the scarf is the one who took this clip. This is where the residents of the city would come to shop for groceries.
Die orthodoxische Schule marbite teuro. Die altstädtische Schule, was ist voll mit Antiken. Das jüdische Ghetto ist volkstümlich. Du hörst ja dem Lemberger Jiddisch. Mech. Und ein Lemberger Typisch, geht in der Restauration essen. Und die Trottoiren drehen sich die Luftmenschen. Man dreht sich auf in der Huppe, man sucht Vernusse. Das Drehen mit den Steckerle ist das stillste Vernusse. Wir sind jetzt auf der Slometschner Gasse.
Jewish life in Warsaw. In the years before World War II, Warsaw was a major center for Yidden and for Yiddishkeit in Poland. It had a Jewish population of over 350,000 Yidden, making it the largest Jewish community in Europe. These scenes show the main street of the Jewish quarter of Warsaw. Yidden can be seen interacting in business, peddlers pushing carts full of products, and people carrying baskets of merchandise. This is rare colored footage filmed in Warsaw in the summer of 1939, just a few weeks before the invasion of Poland by Germany, which started World War II. Children can be seen trying to get into the picture, while some adults cover their faces. The shtetl of Kolbishov in Galicia, 1930. An automobile is not a regular sight in this shtetl, and we can see many children excitingly run after it. This is the Beis Medrash of the shtetl. One can see the words painted above the entrance, Beveis Elokim Nahalech B'Rogesh. The Schlachthaus. People bring their chickens to have them shechted by the shochet. Cheder boys, accompanied by the Melamed, walking out of the Beis Medrash. The market day in Kolbishov. Here, one can buy food, goods, and animals. People are checking the animals to determine their value. The shtetl of Zedeshow in Galicia, 1935. Cheder boys posing for the picture. The water carrier just drew water from the well and is ready to distribute it in the shtetl. Bialystok, 1939. There were two main shuls in Bialystok. The old shul, known as the Alte Shul, and the great shul, known as the Große Shul. In 1939, close to 45,000 Yidden were living in Bialystok. This represented almost half of the city's population. Around the two main Batei Midrashos, there were many small Batei Midrashos in Kloizen, Talmud Torahs, and Yeshivas. Famous among them is the Beis Yosef Yeshiva, a branch of the great Yeshiva of Novardok.
Es ist Mescher von den letzten 200 Jahren der geistiger Zentrum von misrachtigen Judentum. Die schöne alte Stadt liegt voneinander gespreit zu Fußen zum Schlussberg, auf welchem es gefunden sich die Chorwitz von einem mutigen königlichen Schloss. Und jetzt sollen wir übergehen in jüdischen Quartal. Dort ist der Schnippischiker bis Eulen, was gehört zu der ältesten jüdischen Bute Armes in Europa. Das ist der Käfer von Wilnen Guyen, welcher hat es gemacht Wilne vor dem geistigen Zentrum von milrechtigen Judentum. Von dannen übergehen wir in berühmten Wilner Schulhof, auf welchem es gefunden sich kurz 20 verschiedene Schulen, Kleusen, in Bute mit Ruschim von verschiedenen Chevres, wie die Schule von Chevre Schneider, die Kleus von Yesod, die Schule von Guyen und andere. Das ist der Alter bis Hamedrisch. Die Seiger weisen dem Mann von die Twilis. Auf dem Schulhof befindet sich euch die weltberühmte Strashon-Bibliothek, welche vermogt seltene Swuren mit Xaviaten, wo sind alt zu 500 Jahren. Ort der Reingang in der Bibliothek. Und jetzt gehen wir rein in Rechten mitten von einem mutigen jüdischen Ghetto, wo sie bestanden aus der Gläser in Jatkowa-Gass. Die Gass von Guyen. Der Handel in Ghetto wird euch geführt auf der Gass. Du hört ihr dem Geschmacken litwischen Idisch mit dem scharfen Ziehen. Die Balabustis kommen du her Freitag, gedei zu kaufen Fisch und Fleisch in Stern zu und auf Shabbos. A viele Dentist stellt euch ein jüdisches Schild und reißt die Zähne bei seinen Patienten, reden dich mit sei auf Prost Mamaluschen. Der Neuer Binien von der Wilner Ameiles Yeshiva, was besorgt die ganze Welt mit Rabbunim.
Novardok, 1931. The Kehillah in Novardok is most famous for the Novardok Yeshiva that was founded in 1896 by Rav Yosef Yuzel Horowitz, the Saba in Novardok. The Beis Medrash of Novardok. The inside of the Beis Medrash with its beautiful Aron HaKodesh. Bachrim are learning with great hasmada in the Novardok Yeshiva.